tickets to go and visit their fan city at some point in the future. John Salisbury said, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, obviously, Hull was meant to be the first match out there, so I know a lot of Hull fans had tickets for it.
Yeah, when the season shut down, I bought the Wigan released some clothing that they designed because we were the second team due to go, and released some clothing for celebrating the first match away at Toronto. So I bought the hoodie after I knew the first match was going to happen because I thought it'd be a neat souvenir. But now I feel guilty because our club voted against the Wolfpack, so I'm not sure if I can wear that now. But yeah, the fans who bought tickets, what I would say to anyone who's listening who's in that position is Toronto's a fantastic city. I went when there was no rugby league in Toronto to watch, and I enjoyed it as a city to visit. So, I hope you all get to enjoy it as well.
Yes. At some point.
John Salisbury said, an aberration of a decision, short-termist thinking and selfishness from a lot of clubs, shows the weakness of the decision-making process within Super League and calls into question the Super League board. Can only see this leading to a smaller TV deals due to less interesting viewing, less, in brackets, positive press coverage, any TV screens switched off in Canada now, any TV screens switched on in Canada now turned off, with effects both domestic and international game. A sad, sad day.
Fatboy Rob said, correct decision. It's unworkable and always has been. Add in the lack of payments to players and suppliers. No credible business plan. Spending $1 million on one player and not enough players, and it's a no-brainer. Promote to lose.
Sorry, it's you, Al.
Yeah, Paul Mack says, with Toronto unlikely to be able to play in Canada next year anyway, and the fact they'd most likely be relegation material, why wouldn't Super League just let Toronto Wolfpack do it themselves and avoid this? Elston's judgment surely has to come into question now, if it wasn't already. If it's unworkable, let them die a natural death. You lot are for promotion and relegation. What's been done here is death via the stroke of a pen. Let's be real, this is not about divvying up the 1.8 million distribution Toronto would have got. Blame everyone here. An unprecedented season should have seen a more understanding approach from Super League, but Elston saw it as his chance to get rid of them. He was never in favour.
The Wakey White said, right decision for me, it's just not sustainable long term. I think someone like Toulouse or York would be a better option if we are looking to expand. Feel for the Toronto fans though, they really seem to embrace the game. Hope they can carry on in some guise.
Weave and Bob said Super League doing what Super League does best, self-interest.
Ian Barkley says poor choice, short-sighted, doesn't cover it.
And Ian Inho Wolf, I don't know. It said, shithole northern towns will always behave like shithole northern towns. People with drive, ambition, business understanding and money don't live there. They moved out. And now many of us don't have a reason to go there anymore. Enjoy wallowing alone in your northernness. Very kind of you, Ian. We got some other ones in that missed the cut off for the rundown, but it's, there's no real cut off, is there, when it comes to this story. But Josh said, we are a small sport full of self-interest. You can preach financial insecurities, but with history of that in our sport, it's just daft. One club claiming needing to make big change to attract new audiences, then voting against the newest thing in years is ironic. He means Wigan there. How can the game move forward? I'm bored and tired of trying to convince people rugby league is good. I've realised the product is good, but the sport itself is not. And he followed that up with a tweet saying it will be his last ever review because he's basically done with the sport, which is really sad, and I hope that doesn't persist in Josh's mind.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it's a very emotive topic, isn't it? I think people get very fired up about it, to say the least.
Yeah, and it doesn't just have implications on the Toronto Wolfpack and their fans, because Dr. Hideous got in touch and he said, I bet that the New York team's backers are now wondering if they want to have anything to do with these provincial clowns. And Karsten said, as expected, the whole process just shows the failures of the whole setup of the sport. So it's wide-ranging in Karsten's view. Sarah, let's start with your view. What was it the correct decision in your opinion, and sort of what do you think of it?
I think I think, yes, it was the right decision, especially, well, I think, as we said a lot earlier on, there had to be some consequence for them not finishing the season. I think a lot of the stuff that's come out now as well, you know, about like them not being able to provide adequate proof of like income or how things are going to be different and accept more than a 2-point penalty and things like that. I think, you know, that's then in danger of them dictating to the rugby league what terms they're happy to have it on. I think given that COVID looks like it's not actually going away anytime soon, how much longer is travel actually going to be an issue? Are these, you know, they've clearly not been able to play any matches in Canada yet this year. Are they going to be able to play any there next year? Yeah, I think definitely at this time it's the right decision.
And if sort of the reports from their first submission were correct, that they basically overinflated with inadequate proof their ability to earn on match days, then losing home match days for another season would have put that just even more in jeopardy, wouldn't it? So like there's certainly legitimate questions around the submission. The first time they admitted themselves it was half-arsed, and the second time Lavolsi was still sat in his car when he was making the presentation. You'd have thought he'd have found a different way to make the presentation the second time after being criticised for all the other times he's turned up to meetings sat in his car, and then it's the Super League that are called amateur.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe, you know, I think there were probably you know, things said that possibly shouldn't have been said in public, but I think it wasn't properly thought through, maybe. I think we're seeing hurls now, which maybe were being covered up before.
Alan, what's your view? Yes or no, and sort of background to that?
Yeah, I think it's the right decision, but ultimately reached. It's like I feel that the decision is right based on the information that we have, but I also think that I also agree with a lot of people's correspondence in terms of Elston's feelings on this have been very clear from the start, from his kind of posturing, even whether they could get a place after they'd actually won the £1 million game. And from that point onwards, it's very much been like he didn't see their position in Super League, and it feels like it's a settling of a score in some ways, even though their conduct has not been right, and I don't think anyone would defend most of their conduct in 2020. So for me, it's the right decision because you can't be allowed to walk away. It's an unprecedented thing to do. Even teams in very, very dire straits have not walked away before. So for me, there had to be some level of punishment. The trouble is that there isn't anything, you know, people talk about can they start in the Championship or whatever. There's nothing to relegate to the Championship. Most of their players are contracted or have offers elsewhere. Their coach does. They have no infrastructure particularly. There's nothing to move to a Championship basis, is there? As far as I can tell, they're an idea at the moment. They're a brand. That's all they are. They don't have anything else around them. So
basically, in a very, very close position to what New York are in right now.
Right now, yeah.
Being a concept and a brand, like you say.
They're a theoretical idea. They're not. They don't have any. They don't have anything physical. Any physical assets, as far as I can really tell.
They're a theoretical idea, but it does affect real people, doesn't it? And quite a few people there have mentioned the fans of the club, and we've consistently talked about the one thing we don't like the one thing that really doesn't feel good here is how this impacts on the fans. So to all the Wolfpack fans out there, you know, we do care about you and we don't hate you in this country, regardless of how some people may have made you feel. You know, people that have been against the Wolfpack from the start, if they have been mean-spirited in that, then that's their own problem. I understand that you guys are angry and upset, and I sometimes have noticed that it feels like sometimes you're trying to argue with people who actually agree with you on things. So that's coming out of your position of upset and anger and all of those things, which is really horrible. I would say with huge regret that I think the right decision was reached on Monday, but it never should have got to this stage. But with what I've heard, like what Sarah's mentioned and what we've talked about just before about what happened with the submissions and those sorts of things, that, you know, not willing to budge on a 2 points, wanting a full distribution, and 2 points penalty, wanting a full distribution, not almost not really taking it seriously in certain aspects, and also the whole idea of this wolf grooming. Is that even a brand at the moment, or is it a potential brand for someone who has a corner, already has an into that market? And so that felt hypothetical. I probably think they could have done a hugely better job of their submission, the Toronto Wolfpack. I think there's fans of theirs that probably could have put more into that submission than some of the people associated with the bid maybe did. Is the way I feel about it from what I've seen. I've seen some really strong, some emotional, some real, some some legitimate comments that have been made, things that could have been put as part of the submission to tell the story of the Toronto Wolfpack that might have helped convince some clubs, if not the Super League board, to change their votes. And ultimately as well, realistic numbers based on real life findings. Because whilst we might criticise the Super League's, in quotes, independent report, it did at least provide some support. It probably didn't go far enough, because at this stage of doing it didn't consult probably enough experts on that side of the pond and those sorts of things. But that work shouldn't have been done by the Super League in October of 2020 after the Wolfpack had pulled out. That work should have been done by the RFL in 2015. It should have been done by the Wolfpack for the last 5 years, and it shouldn't have got to this point where, in a pandemic with a limited range and scope, a desk-based review is being carried out of something so significant. So for all those reasons, I regrettably agree with the decision on Monday, even though I strongly didn't want that to be what the result was here.
Yeah, what it does from my point of view of it, immediately it makes you think about Ottawa and it makes you think about New York, because it put context of a sport that has written a report, or elements of the sport have written a report that says there's no short to medium term advantage here. Now, whether you agree with that or you disagree with that, that's something it's now in the public consciousness, isn't it? So it raises questions about both of those as potential teams, frankly.
Yeah, I don't know what you think, Sarah, but it makes me question as well, like Alan says, not just their prospects, but how those clubs go about how they build. Because one of the hugely flawed parts of Toronto Wolfpack's model for me was this immediate push for Super League that led to the overspending under kind of preparedness of the structure around the club, and ultimately led them into a position where they were a chance to get relegated if they had gone through this season. So do you think it's a kind of think about shelving North American expansion completely, or do you think certainly that these other clubs have to go about it differently?
I mean, personally, what I would like to see us do is try and help the North American game develop, not by bringing them into our competition necessarily, but by helping them to develop a brand of, rugby league, a brand of a competition of their own. because that feels like it would be more sustainable, because then you've not got all the long distance travelling, and then, have some